Hello and welcome to the Fishing Podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things fishing, gear, tactics, venues, and of course the fish we catch. I'm Liam Hall.
And I'm Matt Jones. Well, we're back for another episode of the podcast.
Another episode.
Episode, don't know how many we're on now. A few.
Yeah, aren't we lucky?
Yeah, lucky to be back sitting here,
That's it.
chatting fishing. So this episode is a little bit different.
Is it?
It is.
Oh.
It's kind of different. Well, no. All right, got. We weren't flowing. We weren't in a flow state. Okay, so we're back here again.
We are.
Another episode of the pod.
Aren't we lucky? Why is that funny?
Well, we lucky. Yeah, we are. Okay, I'm going. Okay, so we're back here. Another episode of the podcast.
You've got a spider on your forehead. I don't know. I think so. You turned away and then brushed it somewhere.
Why you got to do that?
You did that. Did you not feel it?
No.
No. It was really small. Could have been a head lice.
Okay, so we're back. Another episode of the podcast. As always, how are you?
I'm good. Doing well. It's been a busy week, as always. So looking forward to doing this. A nice little evening podcast to talk about fishing. But yeah, apart from that, pretty good today.
Good.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Same again. Busy week. Work's always busy. You know, kind of Monday to Friday happens, and I'm just looking forward to getting out fishing at the weekend.
Nice.
So, you know, I guess, how's your fishing been?
It's been good. Last session was our session in Kent. Not been out since.
No.
That was only last week. It wasn't like it was a long time ago. But we'll be back out probably this weekend, realistically, coming up, I think, is when we're likely to get back out. I've not been out to our sort of more, our more regular lake for a couple of weeks. So excited to get back out there. Or we could go somewhere new. I think with a week's notice, probably regular.
Yeah, it's probably going to be regular, I think, to start with. But
How about you?
Same here. You know, kind of haven't really been out fishing. It's only been a week since we last were out. So, yeah, kind of focused on work and now looking forward to the weekend again.
Back here.
So yeah, kind of another episode.
Something different you've teased.
Yeah.
Promise something new.
Yeah, well, I've not promised anything new.
No.
It's just this is a slightly it's a well-known thing that people talk about a lot.
Polarizing subject within the fishing industry, I would say.
Yeah. So, you know, we're gonna riff it. We're gonna see how we both feel about it. I mean, I know how we both feel about it because we fish with each other regularly. But care to enlighten us?
Should bait boats be banned? Is what we're gonna the question we're gonna cover. So yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll kick off with. I think we'll probably shed a bit of light as to why they are banned on some lakes. Then sort of cover, you know, why some lakes allow them and sort of talk that through. And then I think our personal views on either, and then which will probably leak into the first two, but we'll try and keep the first bit pretty factual.
Yeah.
Our personal views, and then what we do.
Yeah.
And we'll sort of go from there, really. But should bait boats be banned? I'll kick off with just why they're banned, a couple of reasons why they're banned, and then anything you want to add as well. But I think the main reason most lakes will ban bait boats is because what it allows you to do. The reality is people are scared that you'll get people who will fish on the lake and will abuse the bait boat. So what I mean by abuse it is you will fish really other people's water because you'll have access to, and you can do it, you know, relatively sort of easily. You can fish on certain lakes, this is going to be relevant, but way outside of range. Yep. So you'll be fishing at range that you probably shouldn't be fishing, and probably then putting it in areas as well, maybe sort of too snaggy or too far, where you're really at risk of not being able to land the fish in the first place.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's a tough one because I think just on like those two particular things, even where like let's just take the distance one for example, like there are some people that do take the mick a little bit with just driving it halfway across the lake and, you know, going across many people's lines. But I think for fisheries to ban them, I think is just such an extreme that it's just not warranted, because actually, if that is going to happen, fishermen will just go and say to them, look, you're now across like five people's lines. You know, you're taking the mick, like reel it in. But I can understand why bailiffs just don't want that in the first place. They're just a bit like, you know what? It's easier to just ban them and cut it out.
That's just not having the first place. Because I think that's the reason. Now, that's a couple of the different reasons. And sometimes it does admittedly feel like sometimes lakes just don't want them on there. Because also as well, there's an aesthetic thing sometimes with certain lakes. You know, having these like things with headlights go across the lake through the day can sometimes aesthetically not look great. I guess also the reality is there's like a thought process. There's a kind of a thought, you know, school of thought where you're going to be pushing fish into difficult lakes, and we certainly had that recently where one of the lakes we fished allowed bait boats, and there was a couple of different spots where you could only fish it with a bait boat on the swim I was on, which was under a sort of an overhanging tree and brush. And the reality is, like, you can't fish that spot without a bait boat.
No.
You just, or a spoon, but then you've got to have a long spoon, and you know it's something else to have. So that's another sort of reason as to why.
Yeah, but I wonder, like, just elaborate on that, whether there's a level of like almost getting in the fish's safe zones. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I think that's the problem. That's why they worry. Yeah,
it's quite nice. Well, I guess it only really applies to those fisheries and those bailiffs that, you know, kind of really like kind of, you know, they fish themselves. They understand how it all works, and actually they don't want people putting rigs actually where the fish feel safe, because there needs to be a balance, you know, in how this works. You know, there are the spots where the fish feed, and you know they'll go there and go and feed, but at the same time bait boats will naturally push them out of areas where they feel safe, you know. And that's arguably what part of catching them, you know, is that you're trying to get in spaces that no one else has thought of and that kind of stuff, and it is an edge. But maybe some bailiffs just don't want that. Maybe bailiffs want to keep a bit more of a balance of an area where the fish just can't be fished for, and then an area where they can.
Yeah, because that's the other thing as well, is there a lot of lakes will designate natural wildlife areas where they will put a rope or they will put some kind of barrier that will stop you from getting in sort of that you know, that sort of guarded zone. And I think the argument is that some people will probably, you know, there'll be an area where you can maybe drive the boat under where it kind of lifts rate, you know, sort of slightly on the edge and raises, and then you can get into the little sort of habitat where you shouldn't be fishing. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why, you know, people don't want them being used. But reasons why and for, to kind of cover those as well, is, I mean, the main one is convenience, which is why sometimes it can be difficult to argue against a lot of the first points, because the reality is it is just convenience. It's just
they're so easy. Like, I remember, like, just to throw a story out there, we were at our local, and this was like following morning, hadn't caught anything. Oh no, sorry, I take that back. Let me start again. Like, we were at our local, and during the day, the first day that we were there, you had lost 2 fish, I think. And then we went to bed, got out the following morning, not a single knock. And then that following morning, you had reeled your rods in and you were going to put them back out again, completely reset and go again. And I remember that session had already got in your head. Like, you were already in a bad way. And obviously our local's a bit of a unique one, because you are trying to put rigs on what is a spot less than a dustbin.
Well, it's like a dime. It's like a penny.
Yeah, you really got to hit a spot in order to try and catch. And that process for you, I remember just those people that say fishing is supposed to be relaxing. That was not relaxing. Imagine having a bait boat then.
Well, that's the thing. It's when you're trying to put a rig. So, for some context. So where we're fishing is you want to be able to effectively cast within a couple of inches of the bank, just from where there's an undercut underneath the island. You want to have your rig going into the water with forward momentum, so that it is allowing it to sort of take advantage of that.
Under it,
take advantage of that undercut. And when you're literally trying to put it like within this sort of distance of the edge of the island, naturally every now and then you're going to have one which strays maybe a bit too far or something like that, or you're sort of pushing it because you think I can get it closer. I know I can get it closer. And that is one of the advantages of casting naturally and, not having a bait boat is you can really kind of put it underneath an island, whereas with a bait boat you maybe can't.
Yeah.
However, as sort of summer kicks in and spring, not only do you have an island that you're trying to cast within a couple of inches of, you've got brush and bush and overhanging trees and things like that, which you're contesting with as well, which come further out, and you're trying to get it in between. You're navigating kind of tiny gaps as well, and a bait boat eliminates that, and it means you can get 3 rods out on pretty close spots in beautiful positions with just no stress.
But I think we're in a unique position with our lake that's a technique we have to use in order to catch. Not every lake is going to be like that, which is kind of where I side for them, because having it in your arsenal to use will give you an edge in that specific circumstance. But if you're at a lake where you just don't need it, you can just kind of just chuck it to center and get it on a hard spot and you'll catch, then look, there's really no reason why you shouldn't need it. But I think the biggest, I guess, to highlight the edge that it gives you is the fact that you're putting it out first time with no disturbance, so actually your chances of catching are a lot higher. So yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, because there's the added thing as well of, is your rig presenting? And I think that's also a thing, why people would use them and why, fisheries and ultimately the reason why I think a lot of fisheries will allow them is because a lot of fisheries just want people to have the best time that they can have while they're fishing. And they want their patrons to have that convenience of being able to use that, of being able to, fish confidently because they're dropping a rig on a spot they know is going to, be presenting, or at least have a better chance of presenting because you've eliminated it going into the water and a tangle or something like that maybe. And the other thing as well, something to consider is, I certainly see a lot of people on certain lakes, like more commercial style lakes, who will use bait boats. Might be people that just physically, whether it's through disability or age or whatever it might be, struggle to cast that sort of distance they need to on some lakes. And having a bait boat allows them and gives them the capacity to be able to get in the mix and
go fishing.
And go
that's
for
a really good point. I never really thought about that. That's a really good point.
Go for the fish that they can't fish, and that's why bait boats, there's have the little handles to help
pull them out the water.
Pull them out the water, because it's for everyone to use, and you can fish at distance if you can't cast that far, because some people, regardless of physical ability, can't cast 28, 30 wraps, and a bait boat gives you that ability to be able to do that. And fisheries want their customers to have a good time, enjoy, be able to use everything they can, give themselves an edge. A lot of the times where you sort of work with the bailiff or the fishery owners, they want to kind of give you advice, tips, ways you can kind of best catch, because they want you to come back. They want you to have a good experience. They want to get photos of fish on the bankside, and anything that you can do that's not going to harm the fish to increase that chance, they're like, go for it. And if that means using a bait boat, then they're happy with that. But there is also the big element of, is using a bait boat cheating? Like, that's the other thing. That's a big question, and that's one of the reasons why I think a lot of fisheries, I think the old school fisheries, don't allow it, because it's like, it's cheating,
because they consider it like too much of an edge. It's like I don't know, it is a huge edge, but not sure I'd go as far as to say it's cheating. Like, you are getting in. I guess though, you go back to the old days of fishing. Kind of the old guys of like Terry Hearn and all those guys. The man himself. We're familiar with Terry Hearn, because we had a lot of success on his early baits. Thanks for that. But yeah, like those guys were like El Clasico. If you can't cast there, well, then you're not a good enough fisherman. You need to improve and then be able to cast there in order to catch that fish. And there's something nice about that rawness of it and it being purely skill-based. You don't want to take the skill-based element out of fishing completely. But I still think that even with bait boats, there is still a level of skill with that, because you still got to, you still got to read the landscape. You still got to work out where they are. You still got to make sure you're using the right baits. Your bait's presenting. You're using the right hook baits. Using the right rigs, and all of those different things that comes with the knowledge of fishing anyway. Albeit, I'm sure there's plenty of people that have just chucked a rig out there using a bait boat and caught. But there is so much more to it than just plotting something where the fish are and hoping for the best. So. Yeah, I can see why those older lakes would consider just not having that, not trying to, I guess, move on. But at the same time, I think they're going to have to at some point because technology is progressing so quick.
Well, that's the argument. That's what I always say to people because, yeah, you're right. Like being able to cast is, I remember like there's been a lot of occasions where like we took a lot of pride in getting pretty good at casting within like an inch of something, and that took a long time to learn how to do. And I don't want to lose that skill. And there was a lot of times where people would see us cast like within like a half an inch of an island, and they would make a point like after a while, kind of being like, fair play, like how on earth you managed that?
There was at the very start, they were like, no, you're snagged.
Yeah.
It's like, you're too close, you're snagged. And we were like, no, we're not. And it was only like when we were catching and proving that we weren't snagged, it was only like when it started setting in, they're like, yeah, okay, fair play.
And that's it. And seeing, when you do see someone cast 20, 30 wraps on a dustbin lid and like you think like fair play, it's a skill. It is an absolute, it's 100%. Difficult to do. And then all of a sudden, like you learn, years and years and years of learning to do that and getting it right with wind and everything to factor in. Yeah. And someone just turns up, sat on their arse, and they just drive a boat out and just drop it on a spot. And there is like I get it's frustrating. But equally as well, though, it's not like realistically, bait boats are available for everyone. It's not only certain people can use them. It's just a case of, you've got to buy one. There's a cost, but you can get some pretty decent ones for not too crazy money nowadays. So I think, the reality is as long as it's available to everyone, fair play. But the technology thing for me is a bit of an old argument because, unless I'm jumping in a lake and using my fists in my hands to like wrestle a fish, like where do you draw the line? Because there's going to always be someone who said like, oh yeah, but using mono and that instead of, braided twine and you're using a rod and a hook that's sharpened or bite alarms. And it's just like, the reality is like the tech is there to make it more convenient across the board. And that's however it looks.
No, I mean, at the end of the day, like these are animals. Like, they'll do whatever the hell they want to do. Like, there's no way that you can control them in that respect.
You can't force them to, until we are literally forcing fish onto the end of a hook. Like, that's when I think, obviously, it'll be too far.
No, but it'll never happen. But it's very much like if you were, if you compare it to, kind of any other, sport like hunting, for example, like, kind of there are plenty of new technology out there like trackers and that kind of stuff that will help you find the animals you're trying to hunt. And, albeit we're not killing the fish, we very much catch them.
Fishing is hunting. That is the reality. But it is a form of hunting.
It is a form of hunting in that respect. And like there's technologies just evolving across the board that will just help you find them. Taking that next step to catching them, well, that's a whole nother ballgame.
Yeah, and I think that's the reality is like using that hunting example. Reality is like, unless you're running through the woods like a caveman and you're going to try and beat an animal to death, like with your bare hands, like there are, guns and, bow and arrows and compound bows. And it is just the evolution of, the sport and becoming more effective at doing it because no one wants to sit on a bankside for months and months at a time because that's the reality is without progression of technology in any capacity, fishing certainly wouldn't have an industry, that's for sure. There will be no money being pumped into it to help create content or better techniques or lakes or anything like that. So I think it kind of is a bigger question in that sense. But I think there's definitely some valid reasons why lakes, don't allow them. As well as, allow them, I think, really. I think it goes both ways. My view is very much, if it's not hurting anyone and, there's a reason for it, then kind of crack on, really.
Yeah, I think, like, what's your opinion on the difference between using 30-meter spoons and a bait boat?
I think the difference between spoons, because that's another thing as well, a lot of lakes will allow a spoon completely fine, but no bait boats. And that's, for me, is a bit... Like we fished a lake which allows spoons but no bait boats. And to me, that's a bit backwards. I don't really see that. Very much is just a case of the person who's made that decision just doesn't like bait boats, in my opinion.
I think there's like, for me, it shows the fact that they're scared of the distance. They're scared of how far people will push it, because if they're willing to say yes to spoons, they'll know that there is a limit within reason, like 30 meters ish to a point where a spoon's controllable. But with a bait boat, there is no limit. Well, there is a limit, which is the range, which is probably 200 odd meters or something like that, which is a lot. So that's all it does for me. It's just it proves that the distance they can go is the problem, and they're scared of fishermen abusing it and taking it too far.
But the thing is, though, the reality is, with this specific lake, they weren't particularly massive lakes, so I don't know if that sort of holds too much water. But I know for a fact that I can cast some pretty obnoxious places if I wanted to, across however many different swims. A bait boat just makes it probably safer to do that, but I'm not going to do that. But some people might. But I think if you can use a spoon in a lake, you should be able to use a bait boat in a lake. I think that's the reality, because it is just a manual way. And we've seen some people with some kind of ridiculously long spoons before, some silly distances. And you just think I've seen it before where it's like covering off a whole side of a lake, and I think, is that just a barrier? And I'm like, oh no, it's moving. It's just someone's spoon. What, they're just putting a rig out. So I think the spoon versus bait boat argument, I think it's personally a cost thing. I think it's just a case of someone who doesn't, at the time, hasn't committed to buying a bait boat, potentially, because spoons are cheaper until you start to get into silly distances. Then obviously the cost goes up. But they're quite cumbersome as well. You can probably speak from experience, having owned a spoon and owning a spoon. Yeah. You have to take, they're like a good couple of meters long, and then you've got to take this huge barrel
wad of other extensions and that kind of stuff.
Super inconvenient.
Yeah, it's a lot of effort, and I think this is part of the reason why I moved to a bait boat, is because where I can use a bait boat, that's my first choice, because it's lightweight, it sticks in a backpack, and it goes with the rest of my gear. When I go to a lake that they don't allow bait boats, I can still at least benefit from some of that range with a spoon. But I've got to deal with lugging a whole bunch of stuff around. It's not ideal, but.
So what do you think in terms, because the other thing as well, which I can see why could be frustrating, is the aesthetic of headlights, reversing lights, brake, rear lights. What's your stance on that? Could there be a compromise of a bait, a lake could say, you can have bait boats, just you can't use them at night with headlights, because then you're not disturbing people's swims? Or
I honestly don't think I've ever heard a fisherman complain about bait boat lights. The only time I've ever heard them complain about lights in general at night is just people being silly with torches, shining them across the lake, literally lighting up other people's bivvies. I get that, because if you're trying to sleep, the last thing you need is a massive great beam in your face. I understand. But the lights on boats, they are not that powerful. They are not lighting up your bivvy. They are not lighting up your side of the lake at all. They are so dim in comparison to anything else that's out there. I just don't think it's an issue. I think, again, if that is something that, kind of some bailiffs are using as a reason not to have them, I think it's just another reason to throw into the pot. It's not actually anything that's valid. I just think, they're so lightweight and inconspicuous. I just don't see why that would be a problem.
Some of them are. Some of them are pretty massive.
Well, to be fair, we were talking the other day about what the Carp Lounge RT7.
Yeah, which is a beast.
And it's a monster. It's $5,000 worth of boat. But to be fair though, they take it to the extreme, because we've both got boats, but we've only got GPS on our boats, which, to be honest, we don't use that. We don't really have a need for that much at the moment. We're not fishing lakes that are big enough for it. But the RT7 has full sonar, fish finder, that works in it.
Yeah, that's the next thing really, is the fish finder element of having because it gets to a point where you would have, again, I think fair play, but you can have a bait boat which will self-drive to a spot that you have previously marked. It will tell you what the depth is, what the ground is. It will tell you, pretty much everything you need to know. Drop the rig and then drive back.
Yeah.
Is that too far?
I think I watched a video recently of a guy from I think he was from Deeper, talking about the new
Deeper bait boat.
No, this was the Deeper kind of Chirp 2 Plus.
Right.
The actual kind of like ball sonar that they've got. And yeah, he was talking about that. But he mentioned quite an interesting thing. That was he has a sonar and he uses it when he's fishing. But he's so adamant that using the fish icons on the Deeper is cheating, that he turns them all off. And he only uses the sonar to just work out what the lake bed is. I thought that was quite interesting. Someone that's so closely connected to Deeper was like, that bit of the technology I'm going to separate myself from, and I'm just going to focus in on this because this is useful to me. I thought that was quite interesting to see.
Yeah, I think knowing exactly where the fish are, or being able to just cast, because that's the reality is you could just cast your Deeper across the lake and just kind of reel it back in until you find where a cluster of fish is, drop a rig on top of them. Because then you start to get into, okay, right, here, let's take this like one step further then. Bait drones. Like, where do you go from there? Because that is where the technology is going to go next, is using a drone.
Is this the point where I can pitch my idea that I had the other day on my bait boat submarine? It just goes under the water with a camera, and you can just drive around looking for the fish, and then you drop your rig, and you can actually use the camera to make sure your rig's presenting, and then.
But that's the reality. Like the next thing that's going to come people are already using drones to put bait out. Like you see it in Europe a lot when you're
so unnecessary
at serious distances, and you can have droppers on the drones, and they'll drop those bait on your spot, and you can take things out much faster, much easier. And then Matt's bait submarine idea, whether you can see the fish and drop it.
TM.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, trademark.
Yeah. I honestly, I think people will take it too far. They always do, but I think it's up to everyone that fishes to kind of find where the line is for them. But also trying to make sure that we respect the sport, because we can take it way too far and take all of the skill out of this completely and just use technology to find all of the answers to our questions.
Yeah.
And then it becomes no fun. Like there is as a kid, there was something happened to me once where I was fishing, and let me rephrase that.
And an old man gave you all of his stuff.
Yeah, that sounds like I got groomed again. So when I was younger, I caught a particular fish, and it was this exact experience that made me realize there is a such thing as cheating in fishing, which is I was fishing Milton Mount Lake as a kid, and my rod, I remember breaking it on the bank and being so upset that I just broke this rod. It was only like a cheap Argos thing, but I trod on one of the eyelets as it was sitting on the floor, just bust it, and that was it. But as I was packing up, the spot that I was feeding, a fish was coming up and taking literally all of the bait, and it was no joke, a foot from the edge of the bank. And as the fish came up to do it, I don't know what possessed me to do it, but I grabbed my net.
I know you're going to say, yeah.
And I netted it.
Yeah.
And it was a 12.5-pound carp. I weighed it. I put it back. First thing I said to myself, don't count.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because again, like that took it too far. Like I didn't catch it by catching it. I did catch it, but I didn't catch it in the way that fishing is supposed to be. Like I don't own a trawling boat. I sit there going like this out in front of my swim, just hoping to catch a 12-pound carp. Like you use rods and reels and that kind of stuff for a reason, because that's the skill, is trying to, kind of get them to take bait.
To hook one, yeah.
Yeah, and to try and hook one. And it was kind of, one of those things where I found where that line was of what was cheating and what wasn't, but it's, using a net back then is so different to using bait boats and stuff now. So the second thing that I was going to mention was like about what it could take away, or what bait boats and technology in general could take away from the sport if we're not careful, is the point of going fishing is and I saw this in a quote on another video, that was, if you fish, you don't know when you cast out whether you're too far to the left, too far to the right, whether you're using the right bait or the wrong bait, or whether you're going to catch here, or should you not stop fishing here and go over there? Like, you know that it's not luck, but you don't know by how much. And that's where I think technology could really insert itself in there and completely take the chance and the luck and all of that kind of stuff out of it completely, which I think would dismantle why I fish.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. It comes down to why you fish and what you want to get from fishing. Because that's the other thing as well, because we effectively enjoy, I think fishing, for me at least anyway, is going out and sort of trying to be smart and learn where the fish are and kind of catch them using what we have. But that's because my goal is to challenge myself to catch the fish and then release the fish.
Yeah.
I think where it becomes different is if you're trying, with certain sports, like whether it's hunting or something like that. The reality is, or at least putting food on someone's table, the end goal is to eat.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter how you do that. There's no sport element to that. Sometimes it's just a case of you just want to put a net in a river and you just want it to fill up with fish, and you want to it's because you're going to try and eat them. And that's the difference between fishing and obviously, just catching for the sake of trying to, whatever is what you want to do it for. So I think that's the thing is, my view is, as long as you're happy with how you're doing it and you're enjoying it still, and you're not ruining it for anyone else, I think that's where it becomes like, I think that's the line. And for us specifically, I use a bait boat. So that's my sort of personal view.
Yeah.
But I also cast if I need to, like it depends. And like, if there is a situation where I can cast to the spot and it's, and I'm confident that it's not really going to be much difference from using a boat, I'll just cast it out. I'm not like, I need to put a boat, put it in a boat and sort of drive it out. Because I don't think it's only when the time specifically calls for it, I think. And that's kind of my view. And I think, just use it. Like, I think as long as you're not ruining it for anyone else or yourself, like, do what you want to do, really.
Yeah. I mean, I think I completely agree with that stance. I mean, I use, a spoon sometimes for those lakes where I don't allow bait boats because I still want that edge sometimes. But then equally, like, kind of if it's castable, then just cast it. Like, I don't feel the need to have a bait boat all the time. There was even the other day I was at a lake and there was a guy that was like just relentlessly using his bait boat and he was surface fishing. But the thing is, he couldn't. He had such a lightweight kind of like waggler float on. He couldn't get it to the distance that he needed it to. So he was putting the waggler float and the
I didn't know that.
and the bread in the bait boat, driving it around the school of fish that were feeding, dropping it, and then reeling it back in again instead of just casting it. And I just thought, come on, that's too much, man. Like, there's always a line, and like for me, like it's supposed to keep fishing less stressful because I do it to de-stress.
You'll enjoy it, right?
It's a nice experience. I don't want to be sitting there getting angry because I can't hit a dustbin lid spot. But then at the same time, like if I know I can, I'll just do it. Like it's not a big deal. Like I don't like. Let's put it this way. I mean, if the bailiffs say bait boats aren't allowed, it won't stop me going to the lake.
Yeah, the reality is like it's just whatever you want to do, because there is definitely an element. I do get the concept of like the cheating sort of concept and like when is it taking it too far, but I think that's a personal thing because there are people who just enjoy. There no doubt at some point in the future there will be someone who's listening to this, who you are, who will disagree with all of this and just think, no, I am cast out. If you can't do that, I don't agree with it. And that's fair. That's completely fair. That's because you've put your stall out, you have drawn your line in the sand. But then there will be some people who cannot wait until the Matt Jones TM drone submarine comes out because you find the fish and you drop it on the spot, or a boat with a net attached to the back of it and you just drive it around until something goes in the net so you can get
got two bait boats with a net in between, and you can net the lake
so you can get a nice picture. And like if you're staying within your swim and you're not ruining it for someone else, like I think realistically there's got to be room within the industry to grow and to have new ideas and to try new ideas and to get it wrong, because that's what keeps the sport fun. Like that's what keeps it interesting. The evolution of bite alarms, for example, is what allows night fishing to be easier and nicer.
It's the same as day fishing now.
Yeah, precisely. So you do have to allow the sport to grow, and there will be good ideas and there will be bad ideas. Some, that have come out recently from a new fishing brand, which, self-hooking systems and stuff. But, there's all sorts of ideas.
Some people agree, some people don't
Some
agree.
people agree, some people don't.
Yeah.
It's a hot take.
Yeah.
But I think that's my view. And I think I will keep continuing to utilize the new tech that comes through and make decisions for myself.
I agree. I think I'm going to do exactly the same, whilst just keeping a very close eye on why I fish and making sure that I don't go down a path, because it will just progress faster than I'm willing to. I go down a path that, kind of takes me away from the core reasons why I do it. Yeah. So as long as I keep enjoying it and I still have that, like, the wonder to fishing, then easy.
However, when I'm old and grey and I can't cast really far, I do hope that there is some kind of drone out there where I can still fish and cast at long distances.
Might be made by me, might be made by someone else. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I think that's such a good reason to use bait boats. I didn't think of that one.
Yeah, massively.
For all of the the elderly that still want to keep fishing, it's such a clean, easy way of them being able to do it without having to get up and cast and that kind of stuff. If you've got mobility issues, that's huge.
Massively.
Yeah.
So that concludes that topic, I think, pretty nicely. Yeah. I think we covered that from pretty much every angle, probably angles we didn't think we were going to cover it from when we started. Yeah, we
covered that pretty in depth.
Yeah, we went into tech and everything.
Tech, deepers, sonar, fish finders.
Maybe we should change the question to tech in the fishing industry or progression too fast or something like that.
Maybe.
But who knows? But move us on nicely to our question segment. Questions from you. This one's not from a social channel. This was actually from someone who I was speaking to on the side of the lake. Recently. And they just asked the question. It was kind of an offhanded question, but it was something that I think is something that's sort of worth, not a full episode of discussion, but a quick sort of back and forth and sort of a tips maybe so that we can kind of pass on.
Okay, later on.
Which is, should and can you ask other fishermen what bait they're using?
That's a good one.
Yeah, someone had asked, can I, is it something they can ask? And I kind of laughed about it because I think the reality is, of course you can. Like, why not? I mean, absolutely ask anything you want to ask. Whether you get given the right answer or a lie, is something else. That's kind of my experience.
So, no. I
think no.
No. I think don't ask me because I'm going to give you a lie.
Yeah,
because I'm going to lie to your face. Get your own bait. Work it out.
It's a weirdly
because again, like just the topic we just said on. That's cheating.
Yeah, it's a weirdly personal thing. And I don't know why, because the reality is, I guess it's the one thing you can kind of hide. And it does there is a secret edge there in some capacities. And we've certainly found in some lakes, certain colours definitely work better than others. Yeah. And I guess the reality is you may well have spent months, weeks, years trying to find out what that is. And for someone just to turn up and go, oh, what is that? Doesn't always feel great.
Yeah, no, I think, look, I'll elaborate on my answer because it's never just a straight no. Like, if these are established carp fishermen, the answer is no. I'm going to lie to your face.
Yeah.
But if it's like, a kid that's just getting into fishing, I'm in the industry of doing whatever I can to help them catch. Like, because then they're just going to, the chances of then carrying it on afterwards are, go up. So, I fish because I like working it out. I like trying to understand the lake, trying to understand the fish, what works, what doesn't work. And when I hone in on a particular bait that is catching more than others, I'm keeping that to myself. But yeah, if it's like an 8-year-old child that's basically saying, I'm not catching, what are you using? I'm not going to lie to his face. I'm going to tell him what I'm using and I might give him a couple to try.
Kick him in the water. Go away.
Brutal. But no, I think like genuinely with like established carp fishermen, that's what fishing's about. Work it out.
Yeah, I think. I
don't mean that in a horrible way. I just mean like.
Yeah, I think for me, and this is where, and I think you're probably the same. I think you're just putting a front on. I think it depends, one, who's asking, and two, how it's asked. Right. So for me, like for example, in doing, this the fishing channel, there's going to be many times where I'm probably going to end up giving away secrets that I would normally and ordinarily sort of keep to myself.
Yeah, that's true.
That's because the nature of what we're trying to do here is to help people kind of give some insight as to what we're doing. However, and also if someone comes up to me who I know, like you or my brother or someone we've met on the lake, and we're chatting away and it's, oh, what are you using them in, that sort of working? And there's an exchange of information and it's general discussion. I'm probably going to be quite open, to be honest.
Yeah, but hold on, that's because that's family and friends. That's different again.
But this is the thing. However, if someone is a couple of swims down from me, they've just seen I've caught a few, I don't know them, they've not made an attempt to come and speak to me at any stage, and they just walk up to me and they're like, oh, and everyone's had it. You know it's coming. It's, what bait are you using? Like, I will probably go as far as to say I'm using pop-ups or I'm using bottom baits or something like that. But to say, oh, I'm using a shave down this, wafter bottom bait mix with this goo, and
too far.
To really go into it, like, I think there's an element of, keep a bit of something to yourself, because like there's definitely a line between, okay, I guess I'll just come over, I'll put the bait on for you, I'll decide it, I'll cast to the spot, and then I'll catch it for you, shall I, while I'm there?
Yep. But so, you made me, you saying that, you've made me look like I'm brutal now by just going, nah.
You're the bad guy.
Maybe, but my secrets are my secrets. No, I think, look, I'm willing to share secrets sometimes.
And I think, I think that's the aspect. That's the, And I think for me, it's just a case of how I'm feeling on the day. It does depend who's asking. If I like you, I'm going to help. If I don't, sweet corn and...
they do say it's who you know.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
Maybe get to know us first and then we'll tell you.
Come and have a chat.
Yeah. All the comments we're going to get on this video now is what bait we use.
What bait you use. Yeah. Come and have a chat and we'll tell you.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah, so I think that's a pretty good place to finish that one up. We've covered a lot of hot debate topics there. We're going to get a lot of polarized opinions, comments, maybe, I think, in the future. But yeah, thank you very much for listening, watching, subscribing, following, liking. Yeah, wherever you are. Goes a long way.
Yep, the support's welcomed, as always.
And until next time, we'll catch you later.
Catch you later.
Jeez, that's good. I can't believe this. I hate that.
I can't believe that's where we're going now.